Another 3 months have passed, and you know what that means? It is time for another quarterly language checkup. Okay, so the languages that were relevant for this part of the year were English, Japanese, German, Dutch, Korean, and Spanish. English and Japanese were relevant languages for this quarter, or rather for the first half of the year, because, well, I'm getting a degree in English and Japanese. For Japanese, my yearly goal was to read 18 books, which I'm quite far behind on that, but I'm very confident that I can still catch up. I'm currently at 4 books read, 2 of which I read in the second quarter, which are Konbini Ningen and Mata Onaji Yume o Miteita. The second book was super easy to read. It uses super simple language, and I feel like it's a good book if you're like in the upper beginner stage or like lower intermediate stage and you want to kind of get into reading. Put that into Migaku or Yomi-chan or whatever, and bam! Easiest reading experience of your life. For English, I only had the goal to finish 1984 for the second quarter, which I had started, I just hadn't finished it yet. And so my goal was to finish this book within the 3 months that were the second quarter. I'm really happy to announce that I actually did finish it. I read it in Link, and there were a total of 627 unknown words that I had to link throughout the book, which just goes to show that my literary vocabulary in English is really not that great and that I should probably work on that in the future. On to the next language, or languages rather, German and Dutch. My native language is German, so obviously I'm not learning that, but I figured it would still be nice to have some reading goals, which was 12 books for this year, so basically 1 book a month. I also read 2 books in this last quarter, and each of them I pretty much read in a single day. Which brings me to a total of 3 books read, which means I still have 9 to go for the rest of the year. For Dutch, my yearly goal was to read 3 million words because that's about what I read last year. I already said in my quarter 1 review that I was only going to study Dutch if I was feeling like doing it, and not for the sake of studying, but rather for the sake of having fun. Well, as you may have guessed, I have not really felt like studying any Dutch at all, engaging with it at all in this last quarter, so that goal is probably completely unrealistic at this point. There's no way I can read 3 million words in half a year. And then the last 2 languages, Spanish and Korean. They're both in a really weird spot because they're both languages that I would consider myself a beginner in. Korean more so than Spanish, and especially Spanish is like, I feel like I'm in an upper beginner stage, and if I put like a couple of weeks into really trying to get better, I could probably confidently call myself an intermediate learner in a few weeks. It's just that I didn't do anything, like literally nothing, in the last 3 months. When I rewatched my quarter 2 goal video and all the goals and plans that I had set for Spanish, I kind of cringed because I literally didn't do anything. After reading the first lesson of Harry Potter on Link, I completely dropped the language, and I'm afraid it will stay that way. For Korean, I honestly didn't do too much either, especially in May and June. In April, I would still occasionally do some Talk to Me in Korean lessons, learn some grammar, go through the Refold 1K deck, and watch some dramas. But then in May and June, I kind of stopped doing that. I read on 3 different days in those 2 months, I believe. For some reason, even during that period, I would still collect things to read, like easy beginner reading material for Link, but I just never got around to reading them. So that's where my 6 languages are currently at. Let's talk about their future a little bit. By the time I'm filming this, we're already a few days into July, and so the plans that I made at the end of June have kind of had some time to develop to see for me if they are actually working out or not. What I noticed is that while it is nice having like really flashed out plans, having different activities that you do at different times, at different days, I figured that that's not gonna work for me. I noticed that I just need to prioritize and simplify. I had these really flashed out plans for every single language that I have, with like how many articles I wanted to read a week in Japanese, and how many words I wanted to read in Spanish, how many hours of watching I wanted to do a week in each language, and all of that. But I came to the realization that that is just too much planning and not enough doing. Maybe you know that feeling when you have a to-do list and there's so many things on them that you don't even want to get started because just looking at that to-do list makes you scared and stresses you out about all the things that you have to get done. That's kind of what it feels like for me, looking at the plans that I made, thinking that I could follow them, but then really I just get overwhelmed choosing between all the activities that I want to do every single day and every week, and if I've done enough of it or if I have to do more that day, and all these thoughts coming up. So I figured what I really need to do right now is go back to the basics, think of my overarching goal, think of what my priorities are and what I actually need to do, and then go back from there. I need to first get back into a normal study routine, a normal study rhythm, and then add more activities and more plans onto that, instead of having this really strict schedule with all these planned activities and trying to improve 6 languages at the same time. That being said, I decided to stop learning most languages for this next quarter, and I've decided to focus on improving just 2 of my languages. When I say improve, what I mean is that I will regularly work on those languages in focused study sessions or focused learning sessions in order to achieve the goals that I have set for myself. The first language is Japanese. For the last 2 years, ever since coming back from Japan, I've been in this weird in-between state where I'm not quite intermediate anymore, but I wouldn't consider myself advanced yet. That is because I haven't really actively been working on improving my Japanese, and so a lot of the skills that I did learn in Japan kind of declined over the time, so that especially my speaking is a lot slower now than it was when I was in Japan still. I have always been reading a little bit here and there, so my reading skills have not really gotten that much worse, but they certainly have not improved. I want to use this summer to read at least 6 Japanese books. I also brought this photography learning book from Germany, and I hope to be working through that throughout this summer. I think combining multiple hobbies is always a great idea because it's gonna be so much more engaging than learning about something that you don't care about. I would also like to film 2 videos in Japanese. One that is more on the casual side, just me talking about whatever, and then one that is a bit more structured, kind of like a presentation in Japanese. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like that on a lot of language learning channels, we don't really get to see the language being learned, the language being practiced, and the language being used. It kind of feels like an artist talking about painting, but all you ever get to see is one brush stroke. You never get to see the whole picture. The second reason why I think making a video in Japanese would be a really good thing for me to do is because reading is one thing, but I want to improve my speaking as well. And I hope that that kind of keeps me accountable enough for me to at least do some speaking practice in between. As you can see, I'm not super sure yet how I'm gonna approach the speaking practice part, but I'll definitely find a way and I'll keep you updated. Okay, the second language that I chose to focus on for this summer is Korean. It's honestly cringe because as I was scripting this video and looking back through my old videos, I noticed that this month, July, is technically my 6th month of me studying Korean. At this point, I'm kind of treating Korean like I'm starting from 0, or maybe 0.5, because there's a little bit of knowledge left. It's just not a lot. Over the last couple days, I reset the Refold 1K deck and I started learning with that again, just to get that base vocabulary built up again. I'm ignoring all the words that I already know just so that my reviews don't stack up like crazy, and I'm hoping to work through that deck throughout this summer so that by the end of the summer I will have worked through the whole deck and potentially have started sentence mining or getting another deck that has more words in it. I also started to read some of the shorter stories that I have imported on Link, and I'm currently at about 300 known words. My goal is to reach 5K by the end of the summer. Right now, I don't really know if that's a huge goal or if that's actually super manageable, so I might have to readjust that in a few weeks when I get a better feeling for how the words known work on Link for Korean. Just to review again, for Japanese, I want to read 6 books, I want to work through the photography book, and I want to film 2 videos. Potentially, I'll join a Japanese Discord or an exchange Discord to practice speaking a little more as well. For Korean, my only 2 goals are to get through the 1K deck and reach 5K known words on Link. I don't think that these are too bad, honestly. Very simple, very achievable, definitely very prioritized and focused goals that make it really easy for me to get up and know what I have to do that day in order for me to consider having made progress. I hope that this will be the right step to get me back into a normal study routine. So far, for the last 1.5 weeks, it has seemed to work, but obviously we can't really judge whether a habit or a system is working after only a week. Okay, that's it for the languages. In this next part, I'm just gonna really briefly summarize a few other things that I will try to work on this summer. They have nothing to do with languages and are just projects that I'm either personally passionate about or are things that I would like to try out just because I currently have a lot of free time on my hands that I want to somehow use. If there is anything you would like to hear me talk more about, then feel free to let me know in the comments so that I know that I might include that into some of the other videos or share some progress updates as well. Okay, the first thing, and I already mentioned that in a previous video, but I'm currently very undecided what I want to do with my future, whether I want to go back to school or whether I want to start working, whether I want to go to Japan, stay in Germany, go to the US. There's a lot of questions that are currently unanswered for me, and I definitely have to figure something out for after the summer. The second thing that I also mentioned in my other video is the plans I have for this channel, such as improving my technical skills, such as editing, and then improving the creative aspect that is related to this channel, the storytelling, and whatever else goes into that. I also mentioned that I wanted to broaden the topics a little bit, so I might look into research and present that to you a little more, things like that. Another thing that I've been wanting to look into is coding, just to see if that's something I could potentially like or if that's something that is completely not for me. I'm not going to commit to anything, I just want to see what it's like, what that includes, find out a few things about it, see if that's something I could like for myself, and see what happens from there. Then there are a few books that I've been meaning to read for a long time, but I just haven't had the time yet to start them. And these are not for improving my language skills specifically, but rather just because I've been wanting to read those books. And then obviously, since I'm here in the US and I don't get to be here a lot, I want to have as much fun as I can, want to spend as much time with my boyfriend as I can, go to different places, have nice food, see fun things and do fun things, enjoying the summer and really relaxing. I know it's a lot, but not all of these things are gonna take the same amount of time, obviously. And I'd rather spend the summer having done and having tried more than less. That's it for this video. Let me know your summer plans in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video.